Job satisfaction drops by as much as 20% in organisations where leaders aren't visibly committed to mental health and well-being. And while 6 in 10 organisations offer work-related benefits, only 4 in 10 directly address workload, autonomy and job design, all of which have been shown to have a stronger correlation with employee well-being. So what does authentic leadership for employee well-being really look like? And how can we measure whether a well-being strategy is delivering value both for the business and for its people?
The CEO is under pressure, the board are under pressure to perform every quarter. And actually, I think we need to lift ourselves away from that when it comes to well-being. If you're just going to look at a well-being investment over a short period of time, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you take that long-term view as a business, not only on well-being, but also as a business, I think you can really see the value across looking after your people.
To help us answer these questions, I'm joined by Chris Cummings, CEO of Wellbeing at Work World. Every year, they unite senior wellbeing leaders from up to 113 different countries across 127 roundtables and 10 global summits. And since 2014, they've been empowering organizations to make mental health and wellbeing at work a true strategic priority. Chris, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining the Wellbeing Talk podcast. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Great to be here.
Yeah, excellent. And really excited to be talking to you this afternoon. Specifically, we're going to be talking about workplace mental health strategy, what works and how to measure it. But as per at the start of these discussions, I always like to understand a little bit more about the person I'm sitting in front of, and also for the benefit of the audience as well. And well, as we sit here in 2025, you are now 12 years at the helm as founder and CEO of Wellbeing at Work World, uniting senior wellbeing leaders from over 100 countries across 10 events globally every year. And it seems to me that the kind of workload that involves, the scale at which you're doing it at, isn't something that you do unless there's some kind of personal connection, some kind of personal story behind it. And I'd be interested to know a bit more about your personal connection to mental health and well-being in the workplace, and how also that has informed the company's philosophy and approach to workplace well-being.
Do I look that tired for the for the global movement? Yeah. I'm very passionate about the topic. If I go back to the early 2010s, minding my own business in the corporate world, doing a job as normal, and it was actually my partner's depression, anxiety, and subsequent poor treatment at work that stopped me in my tracks, and seeing what he went through, and what happened at home, really. So that stopped me in my tracks, got me out of the corporate world, and I wanted to try and make a positive change to the workplace. So I started up Wellbeing at Work, and it was really about bringing leaders together, trying to change the conversation around mental health in the workplace. There was a lot of celebrities talking about mental health,
Sure,
but the workplace was quite stigmatized. So that's what started my journey, and thankfully the conversation has moved on quite a bit since then.
Yeah, thankfully. And in terms of the treatment you mentioned from your partner, or of your partner, are you able to tell us a bit more about, I guess, how that manifested? Are we talking about a lack of support, a lack of awareness? What can you tell us about that particular journey in terms of the things that really motivated you? You said you were stopped in your tracks.
Yeah, I think no companies named, but it was a tech environment, and there was a lot going on in Mark's life. His brother had addiction issues. There was a lot of stress in his personal life, but the toxic culture within the workplace was just compounding that. So the job design, the workload, the lack of trust, the bullying behaviour, and the culture within that organisation just tipped him over the edge. And there were signs leading up to that point, and if the organisation had been better set up. And it's no disrespect to that organisation. It was back in times where
Symptomatic.
it was actually quite normal. And we were coming off the back of the financial crisis in 2008. So there was a lot of stress in the working environment. And I think there was a lot of mental health challenges across the board. And for me, what I saw both at home, but also in the wider world, work was making us sick. Work was making us take our own lives. You know, this is a terrible place to be. Surely we can do better than that.
Yeah, really interesting. And what I take from that as well is, well, it's just interesting how out of adversity you can change. You can then be motivated to take that experience, whether it's lived or observed, to then, you know, really turn that into a positive, a force for change, which is what you've done over the last 10 years at scale, I might add. So thank you for sharing. Here's a question. And well, I know what the answer would be if somebody was to ask me the same thing in terms of what motivated me to sit here and interview people like yourselves. And the question would have been, well, actually, if you were to go back, would you change anything? And ultimately, as painful as it was, for me at least, the answer would be no, because ultimately then I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't have the motivation, the fire, the passion to do what we're doing right now. That being said, you've accrued a lot of experience, no doubt, over the last 10 years, building your own business, starting a new venture. So if we go back to 2012 right now, with the knowledge and experience that you've got from this journey, what would you do differently if you were starting this thing again?
I have to say, look, I haven't been the best boss over that period.
Sure.
You're growing a company. You're doing it in a global scale. It's very tiring. It's very challenging, and nobody is going to care about it as much as you. And that fire in my belly and that passion and that drive to really make global change or contribute to global change in just a small way that we have, nothing gets in your way. So sometimes I can be a pain to work with, no doubt about that. But I know the people in our business, the people who have joined us on that journey, all have a similar passion, and they are the people who have driven this to where it is today. Yes, my name's above the door, but it's their passion and their drive to get us to where it is. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I would change too much because we've got a great team. But what it has made me realise, even though I thought this before, is that people are absolutely central to any growth of any business. And if you get that bit right, then you've got a pretty good chance.
Okay. So maybe more focus on the people potentially from the start.
Well, I think I did my best, and Wellbeing was very much at the heart. We practice what we preach,
sure.
And we try and do the right thing in terms of people's lives and really support them. However, when you're in a kitchen table startup through to making a global company,
yes,
it can be fraught, it can be challenging, and sometimes maybe I wasn't the best person to be leading the business because let's face it, I'd never been a CEO before. I'd never been a founder before. Mm-hmm. I was minding my own business in the corporate sector, and I didn't have the training or the to be a CEO. I just had this passion and drive.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt I've made plenty of mistakes along the way over the last 10 or 12 years. But I would hope that there's a genuine feeling between the whole team that I'm trying to do my best for them.
But that's really interesting. Firstly, it takes a strong character to kind of reflect and actually be open about something like that. In terms of that, I guess that growth mindset, recognizing maybe where things weren't optimized, weren't quite right, and just recognizing the path of growth that you've taken since then. Something comes to mind just from the conversation with Simon actually, and I forget how we got onto it, but the phrase was something along the lines of because we were talking about the business case for well-being, mental health, inclusion, etc. And he said one of the ways that businesses can get it wrong is by when focusing on the numbers in terms of looking for that business case, the metrics, right? Important, yes, but if in doing that you lose sight of the people and the personal stories, that's a surefire way to get it wrong.
Yeah, I would agree that we're in a culture now in business that it's every quarter. What's the quarterly results? The CEO is under pressure, the board are under pressure to perform every quarter. And actually, I think we need to lift ourselves away from that when it comes to well-being. I think we need to look more longer term. And there's plenty of organisations over the last 10 years who have really focused in on a long-term strategy towards well-being. Their share price has increased, their profits have increased, their retention has gone through the roof. So if you're just going to look at a well-being investment over a short period of time, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you take that long-term view as a business, not only on well-being, but also as a business, I think you can really see the value across looking after your people.
Thinking about well-being investment and well-being investment strategy and also the role of leadership in all of that, I wanted to, I would like to get your thoughts on a report that's come out from the CIPD. It's called the Good Work Index. It was released just 2 months ago, so June 2025 as we're talking now. And one of the things, and there were several that came out of it, but one of the things I'd like to talk to you about is the fact that it said that in organizations without visible leadership commitment to mental health and well-being, job satisfaction scores are up to 20% lower. And so the question off the back of that is, what does authentic leadership for employee well-being look like?
Okay, so first of all, I'll say leaders are under a huge amount of pressure. And often with these conversations, we point the finger at leaders and say, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. And I can't remember a time that was more challenging to be a leader at this particular point. So I say this with a caveat that I understand that you're juggling a number of different things. However, a board, a leadership team, it's their ultimate goal to grow the business. Now, whether you've got shareholders or whether you've got investors, or just a leadership team in a smaller business, to be able to deliver that purpose and that mission, you've got to continue to trade profitably. And for me, to be able to do that and to get the best performance from your people, well-being needs to be at the heart of your strategy, your culture, and the direction of the company. So authentic leadership from the top right the way through to team leaders. It needs to involve trust. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be compassionate. You need to have the right people in those positions. Emotional intelligence is a skill set that is probably missing in many of those leaders. I talked to you about, how I've had very little training to be a CEO, but I've put myself through that learning opportunity to become a better person. I think there's lots of people, when I was in the corporate sector, if I hung around long enough, I'd be made a manager, but nobody really taught me how to look after people, how to be a coach, how to be successful, what sort of skill set you need. So I think there's a lot of that going on within organisations. I believe we should have coaches as team leaders. I think that would be a much better approach, not because someone did well for 6 months and they should get promoted to lead a group of people. So that would be my thought process around that.
Yeah, and that actually, there was something that sprang to mind earlier. You were talking about kind of we're talking about the idea of kind of not knowing what you don't know. And it's like you say, you were in a kitchen table startup, nobody taught you how to be a CEO. And it's like, if you're becoming a parent for the first time, for example, there's no I mean, there are books on it, but they don't necessarily apply to you. And it's the same. There's loads of books from CEOs from 50 and 60 years worth of books, but do they apply to your business and the climate that it's going to operate in and the vision and the passion that you have for it? No, it's going to be a learning curve. And, with respect to, I guess, some of the things that you mentioned there in terms of compassion, trust, a coaching culture, those are great what's, but I just wonder, how do we go about doing that, I guess, in a sustainable way with respect to the looking at well-being in a kind of with a kind of a long-term lens, and how do we then off the back of that weave it into the fabric of a business strategy with respect to some of the financial obligations to the board, shareholders, etc.?
Well, in our board meetings, we've got well-being as one of our main points, the well-being of our people. So I think it needs to be discussed at board level. It needs to be throughout the organisation. It needs to be part of the strategy. So our growth strategy is because we have well-being at the centre of our organisation. So that's our growth strategy. We know all of the other stuff that we do, ops, marketing, sales, whatever it might be, finance, that plays that part. But well-being is that department as well that plays into the performance of the organisation.
Sure.
So it's woven in to what we do. And that in turn provides successful results over the long term. But it's in every aspect of what we do, right the way from onboarding a new person into the organisation, right through their employee journey, throughout their time with us, whether that be a short time or hopefully a long time. So it's very much part of our DNA, and I believe it should be part of all companies' DNA because it delivers for what the board needs.
Okay, so weaving it in from the start, it's something that's been discussed at board level, part of the DNA from onboarding through to, when people are either moving on to pastures new or just progressing through the company. Well-being is a conversation that you guys are having.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Here's a question then. So it's the board meeting at Wellbeing at Work World. How does the conversation about well-being fit in? Like in some organizations, for example, they might have a copy of, not necessarily in a board meeting, but let's say it's a meeting of like senior, let's say mid-level managers, right? Senior to mid-level managers or mid to senior level managers. And outside of the room, for example, there's a picture of the mood elevator. And so everybody can kind of actually have that mental check-in before they get into the room. Maybe they have a conversation about it once they get in there and say, hey, this is where I'm at on the mood elevator. And it's just having just that, doesn't need to be a big thing, but it's just that reflective piece, these little steps over time that create that kind of big kind of cultural change where everybody's pulling in the same direction in terms of a mindset that is focused on well-being, just at the center of everything they do, every conversation, every interaction. That's one thing that I've seen work, but I just wondered, because you mentioned specifically about at board level, having well-being at the center of things. What are the mechanics of that for, as you see it in practice?
So it will be an item on the board agenda. So the well-being of our people will be discussed. But when I look at, say, for example, the financials for the last 6 months across the different regions and the different teams, we can spot much earlier what is going on just by looking at a financial report. So you can understand, yes, there might be market conditions going on, but you might have a problem within that team. So that can be spotted much earlier. I would like to think it would come forward a lot sooner than that.
Yeah.
But if I look back over the last 5 years of our financial reports, I can tell you exactly why those dips happened, whether it was something in someone's personal life, whether it was a market condition, or whether it was something we did wrong as an organisation. But you can spot it through the financials, and I would like to think that well-being can be the answer to many of those dips. Because as you iron out those issues, look, there's going to be times where, I lost my father a couple of years ago. That was a dip in my performance, and that's an obvious one, and that's something that, of course, we take that on board as an organisation, and we get and support that person around that situation.
Sure.
But there are other dips that you can actually identify very quickly and hopefully try and fix it.
You made that sound so simple. And I just want no, I mean, it's a great explanation. I love it. And that's why I'm just kind of, let's say, leaning into this one a little bit more. But if it's so simple, what is being missed by, let's say, a number of other business leaders out there when it comes to this particular approach? If it's so simple and the benefits are there for everybody to be had. If it's as simple as kind of just looking at the numbers, quarterly basis, region by region, team by team, and saying, well, there's a bit of a dip here, and we can then from that extrapolate whether it was market conditions or actually there was a personnel issue, challenge, and then put a plan together to try and address that. If it's so simple, what's being missed in your opinion?
Okay, so a couple of things. I think going back to that short-termism, business, if in a corporate environment you're working quarter to quarter, you need to demonstrate things quickly, and so a lot of the wellbeing initiatives tend to focus in on short-term gains.
Yes,
and actually they might fix it that quarter, but actually as a long-term strategy, it doesn't really impact. You can see the usage going down on particular solutions. It's exciting at the beginning and then disappears. I think us as a wellbeing industry or mental health industry, the providers and the solutions that are out there to help organisations, I think we've got stuck in the mud a bit. So there was a big explosion around COVID to support people in the organisations. I think we need to move the conversation on towards performance, because if you're a board, that's what you're interested in. And I think sometimes we get stuck in, right, okay, let's train a couple of people over here and make them mental health first aiders and everything will be okay. I'm not dismissing having mental health first aiders in an organisation. I think it's a great idea, but what else? Let's talk more strategically. Let's talk more long term.
Yes.
Because if we keep on doing these sort of tactical initiatives that get short-term wins,
yes,
then we will be treated like that as an industry. Whereas if we start talking more strategically and talk the board language,
yes,
then we're going to be far more successful, and you'll see the results over the medium to long term.
And then just to round off on this idea of, I guess, this kind of long-term strategic thinking when it comes to a well-being strategy, how do we help leaders to shift from token gestures, tick box exercises towards the structural change?
I think provide long-term examples of where it's happening and success stories. Okay. So I can point to a great study that was brought out with Oxford University around the share price over a longer period of time, actually increasing. There's some real life stories over the last 10 years that I've seen where large FTSE 100 companies have taken a long-term view on the well-being of their people, and their share price, their EBITDA, everything has increased over that period. Now, that's not just by accident. That's because they've taken a long-term strategic view. And if we can start to talk about those real-life examples instead of short-term impacts that we've had, then we will start to become more of a long-term industry. And that's when you can make real change. Because like with some of the employers you're working with, you can work with them for some time and really see that impact.
I wonder if it's about, because it's kind of short and long, it reminds me of like almost a stock market kind of analogy,
It's exactly that.
and any good kind of investment strategy would involve a divested portfolio. Some you're going to have short, some you're going to have long. And further to that, a book I've read recently, it's called Originals by Adam Grant. You know it?
I do. I haven't read it yet.
Okay, but Originals, Adam Grant, and he's breaking down the corpus of what it takes, what it was about, what is it about the people that have affected, paradigm shifts, cultural change over the last 200 years. Abraham Lincoln's, Martin Luther King's, insert Neil Armstrongs. Insert those names here: Jackie Robinson, etc. What was it about their upbringing, their way of working, the way that they, generate ideas that made it so that they could be the ones to become the people that we know today, to change the world as we know it? And there were several tidbits, but in terms of linking back to this idea of the long term and the divestment, it was about having a portfolio or almost of ideas. Portfolio of ideas. So again, some are going to be risky maybe and more short term, or high impact but short term, and then some of them are going to be lower impact, but actually they have it kind of equals out, averages out over a longer period of time. I've maybe botched the explanation a little bit, but again, it was about the divestment in terms of well-being. It wasn't an either-or. It was about recognizing that actually each well-being solution, as we call them, has its place, recognizing what that place is and what that looks like in terms of the long-term impact for the business. Yeah, and that's what I got.
I'll give you two examples. You mentioned Martin Luther King.
Yes.
When was his speech?
1963.
Yeah,
roughly.
So where are we now? 60 years later?
Something like that.
And we've just come off the back of a Premier League football game where there was still racism in the crowd. So 60 years on, now I think we've made progress, but we still get reminded of that. The Stonewall riots were in the 60s. Gay marriage has been around now for... Well, I should know this because I got married that year.
2011, I think.
2014. So what? 12 years.
Yeah.
We still have homophobic situations taking place. Look, these things take time to change, and there will be bumps in the road. But we have to stand up for what's right. It's not right that there's still racism now. It's not right that we're not looking at well-being in a more holistic, long-term view. We'll get there eventually. There'll be bumps in the road, but we have to challenge leaders around this. We have to provide the evidence that shows. And whatever's happening politically, short term, for 4 years or however long, I still talk to lots of employers in America who are not ditching their diversity, inclusion strategies, because
who are not ditching all.
They're not because they know it makes absolute business sense to continue with it, and it's the right thing to do. But it's the right thing to do for the business. Now, they're not going to have a public spat with governments or anyone else who challenges them, but they will continue to do that quietly in their organisations because it's the right thing to do. So I think there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of short-term bumps.
There we go. Yeah.
But if we have that long-term vision as an industry, and really come together and work together to do this and provide the evidence that leaders need, then it will and has progressed. And we have progressed in the last 10 or 12 years. There's still a lot of work to do.
Sure thing. And speaking of evidence, and kind of leaning more into the performance side of things now, what would you say are some of the most meaningful ways to measure whether a wellbeing strategy is delivering value for both its people and the business?
Well, we've got a lot of data in businesses now. And this is where AI and tech can really help. You can measure so many different aspects of the organization, from the individual employee, retention and sickness and all of that stuff, performance levels. We're going to get more and more data, health data around employees. Now, if we look at the future of wellbeing, I see, lots of people are doing wearables. Where's that data going? All the data around virtual calls, Teams, all of these technologies are going to be able to give us a rich amount of data to really pinpoint where the issues are within organisations, within individuals and teams. Going back to what we said about earlier, over the longer term financial performance of an organisation will definitely show you if your wellbeing strategy is having an impact.
Yeah. But I think you raise a really good point there because, like you say, there's the performance of teams, there's the metrics that everybody's aware of, presenteeism, absenteeism, sickness absence, etc. We know about those, but actually, you're right. We are in the information age, and we are at a time in life, in just this day and age, where we have the opportunity. We're so data rich, and the metrics of the business are one thing, but I think they only really start to make sense in terms of making informed decisions that are going to build an effective long-term well-being strategy if you can understand the human story. It's what we said earlier, right? If by pursuing the numbers you lose sight of the personal story, there's a hole in your bucket, right? Somewhere, maybe a few. So yeah, the wearables, and I guess the combination of AI as well, and just how we kind of make sense of that data. And in between all of that as well, just thinking about the conversation I had earlier with Simon, we spoke about the importance of actually being able to aggregate and actually segment that data in terms of what that means for specific groups of people in your teams to look at trends over time as well. I think combining that with things like the wearables, AI, and then also the overall kind of business data, I think is, by the sounds of it, what's going to give people meaningful ways to measure the effectiveness of a strategy. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and look, everything we do is being measured.
Yes.
As individuals, so I can get a pretty good understanding of how today has gone for every member of my team, looking at their activities in terms of Teams activity. Have they been on Teams all day? Have they been zoomed out all day? Is that going to have an impact on their performance? Of course. How can we reduce that Zoom fatigue? Have they been working at 10 o'clock at night, but also at 6 o'clock in the morning? Are they being stretched? Can we intervene there? There's a lot of stuff that we can see now. And I'm not a big fan of we've got to turn emails off after 7 or not allow you access before a certain time or at the weekend, because, I've got team members they've got kids, they're picking the kids up. They've got a window at the weekend that they want to do some work because they couldn't do much on Thursday because something was happening with one of their kids or whatever it might be. We've got to have that flexibility and trust. But you can really see how that performance is having an impact. And that's where wellbeing strategies can intervene. And I think that's where the future lies, because we have so much data. AI is going to really transform this. We're going to have so much information within seconds.
It's almost like we could do with some kind of unified platform to combine all of these data points.
Well, you might know one.
Yeah. So putting all that together, in terms of, I guess we're talking about the foundations then of a long-term wellbeing strategy. What are some of the non-negotiables when we're talking about cultural foundations for a successful wellbeing strategy?
Good governance.
Yes. What does that mean?
So people at the top of your organisation are genuine, authentic, not causing all sorts of trouble. You don't have to look very far to see organisations who have got problems at the top. Everything else stinks from that, and it usually leads to failure. So really, good governance is the top for me, and then it all filters down. You've got to have trust. There's got to be a level of trust that sort of feeds into this. You've got to be back to the office 5 days a week. I believe that's because ultimately it's about trust. And we've got to have human leaders who have emotional intelligence, who understand that people are three-dimensional, and they've got lots going on in their lives. We've got to understand that. We've got to provide the flexibility to enable that to happen.
Leading by example?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say I'm I'm always that good at, I'm an early riser, so I'm straight in the spin studio first thing, and that's non-negotiable for me. And if someone, needs to go to the gym or do sport or meditate and that happens during the day, absolutely, that goes into you. That's the key. Put it in your diary, because otherwise that spot will get taken.
Yeah.
And those are non-negotiables. But as leaders, we've got to lead by example and be authentic and be compassionate and do all of the things that we've talked about. Again, I'm reluctant to always point the finger at leaders. I think you need to have a culture where people can call you out. And I've been called out once or twice in the past by my team, and they feel comfortable enough to do that. So that's that culture of trust.
Yeah, and that says a lot again about the leadership. Because people get it wrong from time to time. We're all human, we're all fallible. There's going to be days where we just we're either not feeling ourselves, or we just don't get it right for one reason or another. There's nothing wrong with that, so long as the intentions are there. And I think that one of the ways to know whether the intention was there is the fact that, like you say, you've got a team that actually, if you're doing things that could be done better or in a different way, your team are comfortable enough to say, Chris, this could be done better, or whatever wording they would use. might be a bit stronger.
They're definitely vocal enough and feel comfortable enough to say that, for sure. Yeah. And I'm glad. I want to be challenged, and I want to be better.
Yes.
And I'm like I say, I've made plenty of mistakes. I've got it wrong, and I want people to call me out when I do.
No, it's a really, really, really great position to be in, and a great example to set. It takes me back to a conversation with Bertrand over at Health Assured, and he said that in terms of leadership's kind of position in this conversation about mental health and wellbeing in the workplace, you have to be in a position where you are able to ask the questions that might give you uncomfortable answers, even if that's about yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And leave the ego at the door. Too many leaders have got way too big egos, and a little bit of humility is sometimes needed. So yeah, I'm an introvert. I'm sort of hidden away sometimes, and I find it challenging to be in crowded environments with the team all the time. So I tend to hide away, but I really think about things deeply. So I want people to tell me those things, so I can then go away and really think about how I can do that better in the future.
No, that's really interesting. So I am stuck on this idea of the introverted event manager. I love that. I love that duality.
Yeah, I'm in the wrong game, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'm absolutely exhausted after an event.
Yeah.
And
the social drain.
I'm wiped out.
Yeah.
And I disappear for 24 hours. But that doesn't mean I don't love being around people. It's just the amount of time.
But that in and of itself, I think, is another great example of leading by example, because like you say, you've got the non-negotiable about kind of being authentic. You've got the spin at whatever time it is in the morning, and that's a non-negotiable for you in terms of a preventative measure. But also, what does authenticity look like as a leader when things aren't quite right, when there is a bit of a dip because of whatever reason, you're emotionally drained, socially exhausted, etc. What does the self-care piece look like, and are you leading by example with that for yourself? Like you say, you retire, you maybe shut things down for a day or so just so you can recharge. I think that's just as important, showing people what you do when it's good, but also when it's not the best at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah, and also we work in a very, like many organisations, deadline driven and quite intense periods.
Sure.
So everything comes together, and then it's like it's the event, and then that fall off afterwards. We always go and do something that's fun, that's relaxing, to decompress.
Yeah.
And we also say to the team that have been involved in that event, take some time, because you have to recover from a big project like that, and then disappear for a couple of days, and that's fine. Rest, recover, spend time with loved ones, because you've probably been ignoring them for the last few weeks leading up to this. Go and spend some time with your family. Go and reconnect to nature. Go and do what's important to you, and then come back as a refreshed person for the next onslaught that we're going to have in terms of delivering something else.
Brilliant. Yeah, that trust, autonomy, and just the recognition of the human story behind every employee is, I think, oh so important in this conversation. So I wanted to pick your brains on another report that came out. It's from the Great Places to Work. It's the European Workforce Study. Came out this year. I don't know whether it was June or July, but recently. And, well, it aims to provide a comprehensive exploration of workforce culture and leadership across Europe. It's based on answers to 80 statements from nearly 25,000 employees across 19 countries, covering everything from ESG, AI, and also hybrid working. And again, several kind of really interesting points that came out of it. But the first one was that it says that hybrid workers, and I guess this kind of links back to our conversation about trust, but hybrid workers are more likely to feel psychologically safe than on-site teams. So, two questions here. Any thoughts on why that might be? And also, what practical steps can leaders take to boost psychological safety for all employees, regardless of location?
I think it does come down to trust. If you're trusted to work hybrid, then you're likely to be more psychologically safe. So there is a good culture of trust within that organisation. I think by demanding to be in the office for however many days of the week, when you should be able to be trusted to understand what your workload is, understand how that work needs to be delivered and where it needs to be delivered. I think there's a whole new podcast on coming back to the office and how I feel about that, and how it's funny that those leaders or people have a vested interest in property who are demanding people come back to the office, but that's another story.
We'll save it for part two.
But what leaders can do, look, it's tough to. We've got a fully remote workforce, so culture is tough when you've got people in Australia, America, all different time zones, and your day is quite long if you're stuck in the middle, like in the UK, and talking to both. We try and come together on a regular basis, both virtually and in person. We have the events where we all come together and build that team rapport, but it is tough. I think it comes down to that trust, that emotional intelligence, that authenticity. Again, those human traits that we all have deep down, even if we don't show them all the time. We want to, I believe everyone wants to be a decent person. And if, I'm positive about that, I'm glass half full. If we have those skill sets within an organisation, I don't think you can go far wrong, to be honest. Where the lack of flexibility is and the demands of you have to come to the office particular days of the week, I think that erodes trust and in turn psychological safety.
Understood. Okay. And then thinking about, again, sticking with the themes of leadership, but now just talking about, perception, right? So the study also found that in countries like Austria, 100% of leaders rated their organization as a great place to work versus 66% of their employees, giving a satisfaction ratio, this is classed as low, of 0.7. And with leaders in most countries, actually, so not singling out Austria, and in fact the UK was exactly the same, 0.7, but leaders in most countries significantly overestimating workplace quality. What would you say? Most strategies are missing when it comes to addressing this apparent disconnect between leadership perception and the reality for the wider workforce?
Yeah, I bet that's globally as well. In terms of the trend, there's a disconnect between leadership and employees. for sure. Leaders love going out and telling the world how great their organization is, how much we value our people. It's splattered all over their website. And then the reality of actually what is going on in the organization is there's a clear disconnect. If you look at all employee surveys, they all show the same. I would say there needs to be some more listening at the top, understanding what's going on. And perhaps, those employee surveys could be shared more with the board, so they can really understand what's going on and where people are feeling. Now, look, you're never going to have 100% happiness across your workforce. There's always going to be challenges. You can't do everything they ask for in an employee survey. But you can pick up trends. We recently did an employee survey with our team, and we picked up certain trends around that culture piece from a fully remote workforce, and are trying to do things to help that. So I think if employees can see that you're working towards trying to answer those questions, then that trust starts to build again. Whereas if you fill out an employee survey and nothing is done, that is where the challenge and the trust levels and the disconnect happens.
I don't think there's anything more disheartening because, presumably, or in a lot of cases, potentially the survey came out of nowhere, wasn't necessarily made clear what the benefit was going to be. And then you don't hear anything after you've dedicated your time for what presumably wasn't 3 or 4 questions. Yeah, so I can imagine that fueling the disconnect. It sounds like there's almost a transparency issue there as well. I was actually very surprised just a moment ago when you mentioned that actually one thing to do might be to share the data with the board. So in your experience, when these kind of employee surveys are done, is it not the norm for that data then to be shared with the board, the people who would then be pulling the purse strings on investments as they pertain to everything, including well-being going forward?
Yeah, I don't think the board were, unless something really strong came out of it, I don't think the board are always aware, and can remain in a people function department. Look, I can't speak on behalf of every company, sure. But certainly from our perspective, I'm the first to be diving into the data when we do something like this with our team, and I want to know exactly what's going on. And some things, as I say, we will try to fix. We will also try and communicate to the whole team as to why we haven't been able to do certain things that have come up in that survey. Look, we can't afford everything. We can't do everything. Some things are just not possible. But we will certainly spot those trends. But unfortunately, yeah, I there's clearly a disconnect between leadership and employees, because they think different things according to this survey. And I've seen that in many surveys across the world. So are they actually seeing the data?
That's fascinating, honestly. You'd have thought it was a given, but yeah, apparently not. And okay, so just a follow-up question. And so you've done these surveys. You are hands-on as a CEO in terms of this conversation, in terms of picking up on trends and blind spots as they pertain to your workforce, which happens to be completely hybrid, spread across the world. So what would you say is one significant thing that's kind of come out of one of those surveys for yourself that you've kind of had to, I guess, change your approach on as a result?
I think many people love remote first approach. Okay, that's clear from the feedback that we've got. They love the flexibility. They love being able to go to the gym, pick up their kids. Nobody's clocking them in, clocking them out. However, it can be quite lonely in that environment when we've got one particular worker who's recently split up from their partner. So now it's a house on their own. They don't have someone to bounce off like they used to. and that has impacted their mental health for sure. Now, what can we do about that? Well, we can ensure that the team around them in that region spends more time together. We can provide them something like a WeWork membership where they can come and connect with others.
It's like a shared office space.
Yeah. So, making sure that they feel supported, and they're an extrovert, complete opposite to me. So they want to be around people. So we're trying to do things to support that individual, because it's tough when you need people to energize yourself, and you're not getting that. Plus you're going through a personal situation. Then, we're trying to do our bit to adapt. But on the whole, we're generally getting positivity around the flexibility and the trust that we have around a remote first organisation.
Sure. And I think there's something to be said again, just coming back to that recognition piece there of individual people's needs. And again, having the flexibility to try and accommodate them where possible. But at the same time, being upfront and saying, hey, actually, we hear what you're saying. We would love to do more of X, Y, and Z, but actually right now, for one reason or another, it isn't feasible. But it is definitely known about at the highest levels of business. And, it's a priority for some point in the future. I think one of the worst things that can happen is that you try to do all things or a number of things and end up inevitably doing them badly. You're better off focusing on the one or two things that are going to benefit most people and do them really well, right? But be also, again, just be frank and honest about, hey, actually, if it isn't feasible. I think people appreciate that rather than radio silence. And then the next thing they see is the CEO going around talking about what a wonderful place it is to work, right? Yeah. Shifting now to tools and sustainability, and the final thing I wanted to kind of pick your brains on, if you like, from this report was actually about AI, ESG, and hybrid working. So it said that only 25% of organizations are investing in AI tools at the moment, and just 48% of employees believe their organization's decisions benefit society. And so really just thinking about your work with senior wellbeing leaders from 113 countries around the world, how do you see things like AI, ESG, and also hybrid working reshaping the well-being priorities of the future?
So yeah, I think AI is a huge opportunity for us in the wellbeing space, and I think that percentage will increase significantly over the next 6 to 12 months. I think investment levels are going to be significant. I think a lot of organisations are trying to figure it out. I think there is rightly a caution from around, is AI good for our society? If I go back, I'm old enough to go back to various transformations that have happened, what with the internet and how that changed industries very quickly.
Sure.
There was a reluctance. I think the speed will be much quicker with AI, and we've got to get it right in terms of how AI comes into our working lives and our lives. There's huge benefits in the healthcare sector. Still a little bit.
One question. Well, no, sorry. It's just, huge benefits to getting it right. But what are the risks, as you see it, of getting it wrong?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not a tech expert.
Sure.
Look at social media, right? So a lot of great stuff comes out of social media, but there are clear mental health challenges with social media, and the age in which people are getting access, kids are getting access to it, I think is impacting the levels of mental health in kids. So that's just one example on, I think we allowed social media to have a free rein to do whatever they liked, and we're paying the price of the downsides to that now. I think AI is a whole new ballgame, and probably 25 times more impactful in terms of our mental health and what it could do. There's no doubt about that. We're going to have job losses. We're going to have impact in workplaces. Industries will be disrupted significantly. We've seen we saw that with the internet, with travel. It's completely different now. And we will see that in AI. I'm not an expert, but I can see the journey we're going on. But we have to get it right in terms of how we allow that to develop. Because with social media, I don't think we're trying to play catch up now.
Yes.
And the horse is already bolted. And unfortunately, lots of kids have been affected by that.
And I think there's almost a risk, just thinking about the scale of change coming from something like the introduction of AI and the amount of disruption it's going to bring to various industries, to multiple generations of people. There's almost a risk of, I think the phrase is task paralysis. We're so focused on wanting to get it right that actually, they say that the worst decision you can make is no decision. Is there a bit of a risk of that in terms of wanting to get it right?
Yeah, and when we come to the workplace as well,
Sure.
there's a human aspect. We're not all going to be replaced by AI, and the human aspect to the workplace is still going to play a critical role. It's how we work hand in hand with technology as we go forward, because there's certain things that are quite far in the future that humans can bring to the workplace that AI and robotics can't yet, and are some way off, I would say.
What gives you hope that we can create workplaces where people can truly thrive?
Well, there's great examples of it globally, and I see it every day. So I'm very, very hopeful and very optimistic about the future. There are big, medium, enterprise, small companies all around the world doing great stuff. They have great leadership. They're really focused on well-being, and the results are showing over that medium to long term. I think the world of work will shift towards more purpose-driven organisations. Younger people want to align their values and their purpose to work. And so as we all work towards a better life and a better world with purpose-driven organisations, I think the world can be a much better place through that. Amazing.
And what a story so far to get to a position where you as an individual and the organization that you've built are at the center of that conversation.
The team do it, not me.
The team do it, yeah, absolutely. So listen, Chris, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. It's been great.